you, Dan, and thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Today, we're going to cover some mastering complex payroll from state, taxes, and shift differentials. My name is Jerica Holton. You may have seen me on some of these webinars before. I'm the product marketing manager, and I spend a lot of time, especially in the payroll space. And our objective today is really just to take you through some of these payroll complexities and to provide you with some actionable tips and some insights and some ways that Greenshades helps to solve for these. So the first thing we're going to dive into is some multi-state taxation, something that we see becoming increasingly difficult for companies as companies tend to lean more towards hybrid work models. We see a little bit of a decrease, but we still see a lot of companies operating in that remote workspace. And of course, just the normal positions, maybe with sales reps, you have working across different territories, or those that you have traveling for work or working across multiple locations. So the first thing that we always want to encourage is employees to regularly update their W-4 forms. You want to make sure the proper taxes are coming out of your employees' paychecks. At Greenshades, we recommend once a year, but as things change, just making sure that they're going in, and hopefully they have the employee self-service portal, they're able to do it here. Just making sure they're going in and updating that W-4 form so you know the proper taxes that should be withheld for their paychecks. Also, keeping that home address updated. For example, let's say you have an employee who splits their time between New York and New Jersey. You want to ensure that their W-4 forms and their home addresses are up to date to help reduce any tax form discrepancies. Maybe there's like lived in Texas or anything of that sort. So you want to make sure that they keep that home address updated so that they're getting taxed for the proper location that they're operating in, so they are working from home. That is their home working location. And then lastly, you want to make sure that pseudo rates are regularly updated. At organizations like Greenshades, we keep this rate updated for you throughout the year. So as they change, we keep our tax tables updated and make sure that the proper state taxes are coming out. Again, goes back to keeping those employee addresses updated, because if they are working remote, you want to make sure those proper state taxes are being taken out from the state that they're living in, opposed to maybe where your organization's headquarters are. So I think I saw a few people in the poll, if I'm correct, right, answer the job costing and project-based payroll is one of the complexities that they're dealing with.
Correct. Yep.
So when it comes to job costing and project-based payroll, it's really key when it comes to financial planning, budgeting, and forecasting. You want to make sure that those labor costs are allocated properly to the proper project. Maybe it's a job, maybe you're a staffing agency, you have them working under different clients or locations. Maybe it's a construction worker that you have working on different projects or jobs, but you want to make sure that you're able to track these labor expenses and they're tied to the proper accounting piece. So one thing that can help out is setting up your custom fields in the back end before you begin to process payroll. Some organizations, a lot of outsourced solutions have more rigid fields for these. So maybe it literally is just project, location, client. But with Greenshades, we do give you that flexibility to set up those custom fields to reflect your organization's unique needs. So whatever you're tracking, whatever you want to call those fields, you're able to do that. And you want to make sure that you assign those employees to those fields. And then next, you want to make sure that you map those custom fields to your general ledger. So wherever you're handling your cost accounting, this may be your general ledger, or as I said before, with staffing firms, maybe you're doing billing. So maybe it's the reporting inside your billing software. You want to make sure these fields are tied properly. So when you go in to do your reporting, the labor is already broken out for you. And with Greenshades, you're used to the normal payroll batch that comes out at the end of your payroll, that report where you can review all your payroll numbers. But there's also a cost accounting data report that also comes out that if you do have, without the custom fields or with the custom fields, but if you do have those custom fields, you're able to go in and actually see the split allocations aligned with this cost accounting data. So how your deductions are broken out amongst the jobs, how your taxation is broken out amongst the jobs, and it gives you a lot more granular details to see how your labor is really broken out amongst these projects and all the split allocations along with that labor.
You know, Jerica, this is a great point here, just to, tag team on that.
Sure.
In my previous life before Greenshades, I actually worked at a commercial landscaping company handling the payroll for this company. And being able to, allocate funds or resources or even labor to different jobs or projects that the crews are working on, and they were all over the city of Atlanta. So being able to do that is definitely a huge benefit.
Yes, it definitely helps to streamline your payroll processing as well as, of course, forecast and budget. I know when I was out in retail, it was so nice to have my labor broken out amongst departments so I could make sure for each department I'm not scheduling too much here or going over here because the labor was split out accurately.
Nice. Yep.
So next, we're going to talk about managing diverse compensation types and variable pay structures. So you maybe had hourly workers, salary workers, maybe you issue commission for your sales reps, and maybe you have bonuses for the rest of your organization. So managing all these diverse pay types under one umbrella. So first, you want to make sure that you're communicating your payroll structure. It is key that your associates understand how and when they're getting paid, where their compensation is based on, how it's broken out, and how it is calculated. I definitely recommend during your onboarding having this as one of those documents, and even if needed, collecting e-signatures just to verify that employees understand what all goes into their compensation. This will help with any discrepancies down the road. They understand how their labor is broken out. Next, setting up these unique payroll codes to help account for these varying structures and pay. The more you can set up on the back end, kind of like the same thing with the custom fields, the more headache you will save during payroll processing. What did you say at the beginning, Dan? You see why they were filling $2,000? Set up these payroll codes in the beginning to save your headache during the payroll processing, right? If you guys missed the Dan joke, that was just a reference to that. If you were here for it, I hope you got my little connection there. But setting up these payroll codes in the back end can make payroll processing a lot more streamlined. And again, with in-house solutions is very helpful to have that flexibility to set up these unlimited codes to reflect your unique pay type. So let's say that you do have maybe bonuses that you issue quarterly. If you know they're coming out quarterly, you can go ahead and set these up in the back end, set them on a schedule. And so then every quarter, these are added into your pay schedule. You're not having to manually remember to go in and add these things in. So again, the more you can set up on the back end, especially with these payroll codes, the better it will be. And then lastly, utilizing the self-service portal. So this kind of goes back to communicating about your payroll structure. Employees are one, able to go back and review their compensation breakdowns. And then two, also review those pay stubs, right? Let's say you have an employee getting paid by piecework and they have any questions of how their wage ended up where it was. They can go back, look at the number of pieces they produced, look at the earnings on those pieces and piece together their pay stub from there without having to reaching out to the HR or the payroll department. And then again, the bonus tip, as I kind of alluded to, schedule those reoccurring payments. If you have payments that you know come out every month, quarterly, annually, semi-annually, however you pay them out, go ahead and schedule those at the back end and save yourself the headache going forward by allowing those to just come out automatically.
Just a quick note on that first tip up there about communication. We all know communication is key, right? And we also know that for a business, the laborers are a huge backbone to a business. Without them, what is the business? So just being able to communicate that payroll structure to them, because just as important as they are to the business, that paycheck and that payroll structure and understanding how they're getting paid is just as important to them for their livelihood. So that's why I really love that first tip there, Jerica.
I do as well, Daniel. I think it's very important that employees understand what goes into their pay stub, understand it goes into their pay frequency, when they're getting paid, everything. I can tell you a story for when I was in retail. I told my associates, your first paycheck, it will always come as a paper check. You get paid on Wednesday, but your first paycheck will always come Friday. I had it in writing, made sure they had all this information. And still, there was a little gap in there, but when I was able to pull it up and show them, like, here's your pay stub, you see, we have it all planned out. It's coming in their self-service portal and everything. It eased the tension so much because at first they're like, where does my check? And I'm like, it's coming, I promise. So having that communication and allowing them to have that access to look at these things can be a great opportunity to fill those gaps in any miscommunication or anything with your workforce. So I talked a little bit about the payroll codes before, and I also want to get a little bit deeper into them and getting into shift differentials. So shift differentials are really popular for motivating employees to work these unpopular shifts. So maybe it's the weekends, the holidays. I know with healthcare workers, a lot of times they provide shift differentials on overnight shifts to entice more nurses to want to work these shifts. Like I say, during my time in retail, I was a manager during the COVID period. So during that time, it was hard to get a lot of workers in. So we actually had shift differentials for the holidays during those times, the weekend shifts during those times, little incentives to get employees to want to come into work. So this can be a great motivator to get your employees to work these unpopular shifts. Again, another example, my sister during the 4th of July, her company was offering time and a half. So extra money on top of that shift, a great incentive plan to have your employees to work some of these shifts that are maybe hard to get people to take on. So setting up payroll codes in the back end, as I said before, setup. I cannot stress this point enough, is going to be the most important thing to making your payroll process seamless. So setting up these payroll codes on the back end to reflect these shift differential earnings will make your payroll processing a lot easier. If you're processing payroll and taking in those timesheets from Greenshades, you can set up these shift differentials so you're able, when you go in to process payroll, it's attached to those shifts that employees work. It identifies which shifts it should be attached to. And during your payroll process is seamless. And with tip three, taking into overtime consideration. So even if you have overtime attached to those shifts, the calculations get really complex. In the recap, I'll actually attach a blog that we have with Greenshades on how to calculate overtime on shift differential shifts. It can get really complex when you get into the new options of it, but luckily with Greenshades, we automate those things on the back end for you. And if you're pulling in timesheets from outside solution, maybe from outside provider, maybe something like Bullhorn, we're able to take in those timesheets and do the calculations for you based off of those shift differential earnings or pay codes that you have set up in your timekeeping system. So next we're going to talk about garnishments, payroll garnishments. Garnishments can get really complex. There's a lot of laws and rules that go in place around garnishments. So one thing you want to definitely make sure is that you're checking out your location-specific compliance laws around garnishments and make sure you remain compliant. There are laws placed around discrimination around garnishments, so not being able to discriminate against employees based off of how many garnishments they have. There's federal laws as well as state laws that vary. So you just want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on these laws just to make sure your organization is remaining compliant when it comes to withholding these garnishments from your employees. And any special pay runs that you're adding in, you want to make sure you're applying these garnishments when necessary. I know in the Greenshades system, we provide a little alert that will alert you to maybe if there's any concern with adding in the garnishments or anything like that. But you want to make sure on these special pay runs, where you need to, you are adding in these garnishments and having them on the pay run. And then lastly, with systems like Greenshades, we do have a really detailed garnishment setup. And so when you're going in and putting your garnishments, we account for nearly everything possible from child support garnishments to maybe student loans to maybe you have credit payments to pay back. We have a really detailed setup. And when you're going through to put in these orders, you want to make sure you're looking line by line and making sure you have that accurate information going into the system. So you really want to review these garnishments as closely as possible when you're putting them in. And then once you get to payroll processing, those garnishments that you have applied to employee will take into effect and it will be deducted in the applicable order based off of compliance standards. And then again, talking about some of these compliance guidelines around garnishments will make sure that employees are left with the minimum wage that they should have with the garnishments coming out. So we're not leaving them with 1 cent to their paycheck. We're staying in with the compliance regulations and making sure that they had the bare minimum of their salary needed with the garnishments coming out.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on the point I had spoken about earlier, Jerica, garnishments aren't a fun thing, right? It's not like, oh, it's garnishment time, So making sure that for the employees that we get this right for them so that, when it's done properly the first time right out of the gate is so beneficial. So having, a system kind of like Greenshades that's going to be able to help you handle this seamlessly just by setting up what you need to and then letting it go and knowing that it's doing all the calculations properly for you because you took the time to set it up right. Like that's just going to help the employee through that time of the garnishment.
Yes, and one thing I forgot to mention that you made me think of, Daniel, is also just making sure you have that right end date in there so those garnishments cut off when they're supposed to. to your point, this isn't something that is fun for employees. So we want to make sure, one, we leave them with the proper amount of wages at the end of their garnishments coming out. And two, that we're cutting it off at an applicable date. So their wages are no longer getting garnished past when they need to be garnished.
No, absolutely.
So next, voluntary benefits and tying these to your payroll deductions. Benefits, of course, is a whole nother beast to tackle, and I won't go into too in depth about that. But when it comes to tying these benefits to your payroll deductions, it can be really helpful. So first, we're going to talk about making sure that you have the right types. So you may have fixed deductions, which is a set dollar amount that comes out for health insurance premiums or whatever benefit that you're offering. Or you may have a percentage, something like 401k or retirement benefits. Maybe you are giving 7% or 10%. You want to make sure that you have these tax types set in. So when they are coming out, it's coming out either on that dollar amount or that percentage based off of that employee's wage. And you want to make sure your frequency is set up correctly. So how often are these coming out? Monthly, bi-weekly? How should these be split amongst these paychecks? And then you want to make sure you're using the correct box 12 for W-2. So that box 12 contains various codes used to report a different type of compensation and benefits provided to employees. Each code will reflect the specific type of income or benefit. So when you're going to put in these box 12, you'll make sure that you have those right codes associated with them based off of your organization's benefits. And you want to ensure your schedule is correct based off of your organization's needs. So you want to make sure that these deduction codes are coming off based on what you need. And then, so when you set these deductions up, they're applied during payroll. Again, going into the back end, going into your settings, making sure you have these deduction codes set up on the back end. So you're making that payroll process seamless and are coming out based off of the fixed, the percentage, based off of the frequency, and then you're ready for year and time when it comes to those W-2s. So next, we want to talk about support for multiple payroll frequencies. So with Greenshades, not only do we support multiple payroll frequencies, so whether you're paying employees weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, semi-annually, or annually, we also support unlimited pay runs. So let's say you need to process 5 off-cycle paychecks, as maybe there was a mistake here, you need to issue termination pay here, you need to issue an off-cycle check here. You're able to do that on your own terms and no cost. We know a lot of outsourced payroll providers kind of box you into a certain number of pay runs that you can do, as well as charging you extra if you do need to issue some off-cycle payments. But we also support unlimited pay runs, as well as supporting multiple pay frequencies. So getting into this first tip, it's important to establish a standard FLSA work week, regardless of your pay frequency. So the FLSA workplace laws are all set around the normal standard work week, a 7-day work week, 168 hours, consecutive 24-hour days, Sunday through Saturday. So regardless of your pay frequency, you want to make sure that you have this standard work week set in. So when it comes to items such as overtime, which is going to be the biggest one, you're staying in line with these compliance guidelines. Because if your work week is off, you may have an employee working 50 hours and they're not getting compensated properly because it's not within that standard 168-hour work week called out by the FLSA. So just making sure that you understand that these laws, no matter what your pay frequency is, applies to the standard 7-day work week. And then next, you want to set up pay schedules to support all your payroll frequencies and ensure your employees are assigned to the right pay schedule. You can set this up in the beginning or later on if you need to set up more pay schedules, you can. But making sure you have one, those pay schedules set up, and then two, you can set up things such as limited admins to have them take control of certain pay runs. So you can have this set up in the back end to help your admins to separate out these pay frequencies. So you have your weekly employees, you have your bi-weekly pay run, you have your monthly pay run, and you have admins that are assigned to each one. And now it's easier to manage and it's easier to pay those employees based off of their frequency. And then lastly, maintaining constant communication with your employees about their pay schedules and any changes. If there's anything going on, I know everybody remembers the Silicon Valley bank crisis. Hopefully something like that never comes around again, but if there's any discrepancies, anything that will throw your employees' pay schedule off. You want to make sure that they are up to date on this and you are communicating, as me and Dan have stressed this entire webinar, I believe. It is very important to keep your employees informed because they are one, your greatest expense, but also your greatest asset to your organization. So making sure that they understand any changes to their payroll will be crucial. So next, easily making changes with retroactive pay adjustments. If you need to go back and make adjustments for any reason, it can be an overpayment to employee, an underpayment to employee. Maybe you forgot to attach that commission or bonus or pay stub. I know when I was working part-time a while back, my managers kept reading me in my time sheets. And so I would be missing my paychecks. They would have to go back in and like give you a whole new check. So anything that will cause you to have to go back to make adjustments. So first, you want to keep detailed records of the pay rate change. So what the changes were when you had to make the adjustment and the reasons for the adjustments. If you have any questions for yourself, audits, or employees, these records are going to be really helpful to allow you to go back and research. And then you want to use payroll software to support retroactive payments. So software like Greenshades, not only do we support them, but when you go in to make payment adjustments or payroll adjustments, when you select the reason, we actually provide suggestions and tips on how to rectify these issues. So you want to have somebody who, one, supports it, two, they can give you expert tips for what to do with these pay adjustments, and three, that allows you to see these changes in real time. So when you're going in to make these adjustments, you can see these calculations in real time to understand what the changes are going to be. And then I know you guys are like getting communicate with your employees, but any type of adjustments, communicate with your employees. In today's world of financial uncertainty, if you are making adjustments, maybe they are short on that check, having that timeline will provide them such a peace of mind to know, hey, my check is coming. It's okay. Because while for you, it's just issuing a paycheck again, maybe their bills don't stop. They have rent coming up, they have a car payment coming up, and they need that money to come in. So just communicating with them when they will see the money, what's going on, just clears up, one, a lot of uncertainty, and two, just builds that trust between you and your employees.
That should be like the word of the day for this webinar, Jerica. Communicate.
Communicate to employees. It's like that's our biggest like I said, asset to the company. And it's like with payroll, people, you don't hear much from your employees and everything is going right, but when things are going wrong, you are definitely going to hear from your employees.
Absolutely. And that's back to tip one, then keeping those detailed records. You know what they say, keep the paper trail to save your tail. So keep it all in alignment and keep communication. You'll be good.
I like that, Dan. Keep the paper trail to save your tail.
That's right. Copyright Daniel Adams.
That's another tip that you guys are getting out of here. That's tip number 4. Bonus tip. So next is integrating benefits and incentive programs into your payroll. So first, it's going to be important to, of course, communicate benefits and incentives during onboarding and open enrollment. So making sure that your employees understand the benefits offered to them, what it will cost them in their paycheck, and setting up those percentages and fixed amounts so they're okay with coming out of their paycheck. Using a payroll software that integrates with your benefits will be crucial because during these open enrollment periods, as they're changing their benefits year over year and making modifications, their eye, dental, health, whatever benefits that are coming out, these codes will reflect automatically and update within your payroll software. So when you go to run payroll, these new numbers are coming out. Your updated benefits are coming out. So using a payroll software that integrates with your benefits can really streamline the process of managing these deductions. And then just review and update benefits offerings to stay competitive and compliant. Another note that's kind of on the employee side, managing benefits and offering benefits to help stay competitive is a great tool in today's market. A lot of employees are looking for what they can get out of their employer and what employers are giving back and how they care for their employees. So benefit offering is a great way to show that care. And then lastly, utilize share codes for managing multiple plans or catch-up codes. So let's say you have somebody that does a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k and maybe catch-up contributions as well because maybe you're over the age of 50. These are a lot of different deduction codes, and by grouping them together, you're able to manage this and also stay aligned with the wage-based requirements. So making sure that you're not going over those contribution limits. And then lastly, just streamlining expenses. And I'll go through this one really quick, so I know we're getting close to time. But managing your employee expenses with payroll. So again, implementing a clear policy to your employees, making sure they understand how to initiate their expenses. And then having an integrated payroll solution that allows those expense managements and a reimbursement process to be streamlined through your payroll operation. So however you choose to reimburse your employees, you want to make sure that you're going through your payroll system and you have a nice integration to help streamline this. So now we're going to quickly just kind of go through a quick wrap up. You can manage your payroll with compliance automation. A lot of these things, once you set them up on the back end, it automates during your payroll process, saving your team time and effort. So you want to make sure you configure these codes in the back end and your settings to suit your organization's needs. You want to make sure your payroll grows and scales. You revisit these complex needs and update your payroll codes, update your policies, and communicate with your employees any of these changes. And then streamline your payroll. So making sure that your benefits, your timesheets, your payroll are all integrated together to create one streamlined solution, as well as your employee self-service, so your employees are also educated. Thank you guys for joining. We're Greenshades. We're payroll, human resources, benefits administration, tax and compliance, so handling your payroll, tax year reforms, and time and labor management. Thank you, Dan. And again, I want to thank you guys for joining us today. If you have any questions, please still drop them in that chat. I know we're at time, but in that recap, I will be sure to answer any questions that you guys have, as well as look out for that link so you guys can manage, learn how we do shift differentials and overtime. And we look forward to hearing out from you guys. Please reach out if you have any questions or like to see a personalized demo. Thanks, guys.